Most people keep scrapbooks to remember the past. They collect photographs of vacations, ticket stubs from movies, or dried flowers from a wedding day. They are artifacts of joy, meant to be shared, meant to be boasted about, meant to keep the memories of our own happiness alive. But what if a scrapbook wasn't just a collection of memories? What if it was a ledger of lives, a record of existence preserved in ink and paper, hidden away in the dark corners of an attic for half a century? Welcome to Noble Tales. I am the Curator, and today I invite you into my archive. We are opening a chapter that is heavy with the dust of time, a chapter that speaks to the nature of silence. Could you keep a secret for 50 years? Not a small secret, not a private embarrassment, but a secret that involved the fate of hundreds of children in the darkest hour of the 20th century. Most people, if they had achieved what this man achieved, would have shouted it from the rooftops. They would have written books, demanded medals, and sought the applause of the world. But for Nicholas Winton, silence was not an absence of sound. It was the ultimate act of nobility. To understand the weight of his secret, we must first understand the world that necessitated it. The year was 1938. Prague was a city of ancient beauty, a place of spires and cobblestones. But in that winter, the cold was not just in the air, it was in the hearts of its people. The shadow of occupation was lengthening. Everywhere you looked, the world was rearranging itself into a shape that had no room for the vulnerable. Families were being pushed to the margins of society. The anxieties were quiet but absolute. People walked with their heads down, terrified that eye contact might be interpreted as defiance. And in the midst of this crumbling reality, there were thousands of children. They didn't understand the geopolitics of the time. They didn't understand why their schools were closing, why their parents were suddenly terrified, or why their world was narrowing into a cage. They were simply children, existing in the crosshairs of history. While the great powers of the world were locked in endless diplomatic negotiations, paralyzed by fear and bureaucracy, these children were becoming hostages to a darkness that was rapidly approaching. And then there was Nicholas Winton. He was 29 years old, a British stockbroker. To the world, he was just another man in a suit, navigating the mundane anxieties of the London financial district. He had no military rank. He had no official authority, no government budget, and no backing from the powerful. He was, by all accounts, an ordinary man. But ordinary men are often the only ones who can perform extraordinary acts, simply because they do not wait for permission to be good. Nicholas saw the reports coming out of Prague. He saw the refugees, the desperation, the abandoned families. And instead of turning the page of his newspaper, he decided that if something is not impossible, then there must be a way to do it. It became his mantra. Every night, in the cramped quiet of his hotel room, he sat at a small desk. He didn't have a team of secretaries. He had a telephone, a pen, and a relentless, burning need to intervene. He wrote hundreds of letters. He contacted foreign embassies, begged the British government for visas, and navigated the suffocating red tape of the time. He had to find foster families in England willing to take in a child they had never met, who spoke a language they didn't understand, and who arrived with nothing but the trauma of displacement. Think about the audacity of that. To ask a stranger to open their home in a time of global uncertainty. And yet, Nicholas persisted. He fought the bureaucracy, he bribed the officials, and he convinced the families. He was a broker, yes, but he was brokering lives. He organized 8 trains, 8 journeys, 8 iron beasts cutting through the heart of Europe, carrying innocence away from the fire. 669 children, 669 lives that would have otherwise been swallowed by the void. But history is rarely a story of perfect victories. There is a terrible cruelty in the way the world turns. On the very day that the Second World War broke out, the 9th train, carrying 250 children, was stopped at the station. It never left. Those children were never seen again. For the rest of his life, Nicholas Winton lived with the presence of those 250 children. He lived with the weight of the ones he could not save, more than he lived with the pride of the ones he did. He didn't see himself as a hero. He saw himself as a man who had failed to finish the job. And so he kept the scrapbook. He put it away. He got on with his life. He raised a family. He worked. He aged. He kept his silence for 50 years. 50 years. Think of what happens to a secret over half a century. It becomes part of the architecture of a person's soul. It was only when his wife, Greta, was rummaging through their attic that she found it. A dusty scrapbook filled with lists of names, addresses, and the faces of children who had long since grown up. When she saw it, she must have been stunned. She didn't know the full scale of what he had done. None of us did. In 1988, he was invited to a television program. He thought it was a simple interview, a trip down memory lane. He had no idea what the producers had done. He sat in the audience, an elderly man, gentle and unassuming. And then the host asked a question. She looked around the studio and said, "Is there anyone here who owes their life to Nicholas Winton?" And then, one by one, the people stood up. Then 2, then 10, then the entire audience. The people he had saved, now parents, now grandparents, now doctors, lawyers, artists, all of them standing as a testament to one man's quiet resolve. He looked around, eyes brimming with tears, realizing that his ledger of lives was not just a memory, but a reality. The silence of 50 years was broken by the sound of gratitude. We live in an age where silence is increasingly rare. We document every meal, every achievement, every so-called act of kindness. We post our virtues online, waiting for the digital applause to validate our existence. We have become experts at performance, but perhaps we have forgotten the true meaning of noble. Sir Nicholas Winton taught us that true nobility doesn't require a spotlight. It doesn't need to be hashtagged or curated for public consumption. It is found in the quiet, in the moments where you do what is right because it is right. And then you go about your life, content in the knowledge that you have helped and satisfied to leave it at that. He showed us that the greatest legacy is not the one you broadcast. It is the legacy you leave behind in the lives of others, a legacy that continues to beat in the hearts of those you helped, long after your own heart has stopped. I am the Curator, and this is just one chapter in my archive. There are so many stories left to collect, so many lives that deserve to be remembered. What about you? Do you know a story of quiet nobility? Do you know a life that was saved or changed in the shadows? Leave it in the comments. Perhaps it is a story that belongs here in our archive. Until next time.